There's been a lot of buzz in the markets around cryptocurrency as public interest in digital coins continues to climb to new highs. But despite all the fanfare, opportunities for mainstream investors to get into crypto are still very limited. And that's where our next guest comes in. His name is Matt Hougan. He's the Chief Investment Officer of Bitwise, which created the first cryptocurrency index fund. And now they've launched the first ETF to use crypto in its name. So Matt, it's so good to have you here. And just kind of taking a step back, looking at the context, there's been a lot of development in crypto over the last year. It feels like, what does this ETF represent and how does it kind of bridge this investment gap?
Well, thanks for having me on. You're exactly right. I think a lot of investors have been sitting on the sidelines looking at the spectacular returns in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other crypto assets and wondering how to play. And the answer is it's not easy for many investors, right? There is no Bitcoin ETF, there is no Ethereum ETF, there are no traditional vehicles that investors can buy in their brokerage accounts to gain exposure to this space. What this ETF is the first crypto industry ETF. It's buying the picks and shovels, the infrastructure companies that are building the crypto economy. Companies like Coinbase that help traditional investors move into the space, Bitcoin mining companies, Bitcoin mining equipment manufacturers. These are akin to how gold miners help build the gold economy. These are building the infrastructure of the crypto economy, and it offers investors an easy way to gain exposure to that space in a traditional equity ETF.
Yeah, not only easy, but I would assume too that the ability to manage risk, because I feel like, a lot of people looking at this space see these wild swings in volatility. Elon Musk gets on to tweet about Dogecoin and things go crazy. So can you talk a little bit about how that is maybe helping the credibility of this market, maybe with your average everyday investor?
I think it's a lot easier for investors to get their hands around the solidity of these companies. You think about something like Bitcoin, it's very hard to value Bitcoin, right? Bitwise is one of the largest crypto asset managers in the world. I'm the CIO. The valuation metrics around Bitcoin are very challenging for many traditional investors to understand. When you get back into the equity space, we're talking about things like revenue, profit. And one interesting thing about this area of the market is these are some of the fastest growing companies in America, but they're already profitable. Usually when you talk about extraordinarily fast growing technology companies, you're thinking about Amazon in its early days, burning cash to fuel growth. You look at something like Coinbase, it grew its revenues over 300% last year, but it's significantly profitable. And so I do think it's easier for investors to get away from the abstract valuation questions and some of the volatility in Bitcoin and Ether and other crypto assets and get into a world of revenues and profits and discounted cash flows. And when you're in that world, these companies are interesting. They are attractive. Are there risks? Of course there are risks, but they are interesting from that sort of real fundamental perspective.
Right. And you mentioned Coinbase, and they recently reported earnings. I think they had triple EPS growth, which, for a lot of growth investors, that's something they like to see. What was your big takeaway from that earnings call?
Well, it's a phenomenal story. Remember, this is a very large company. This is a $50-60 billion company that's growing its revenues, as you mentioned, in triple digits. That's hard to find, right? There aren't that many of those style unicorns out there, and they're doing it in a profitable sense. I think the story of Coinbase is it's an iconic company. It's the first place traditional investors go to gain exposure to crypto assets. It's the Charles Schwab of crypto. And that's a phenomenally strong competitive position. I think it's one that company is likely to be able to maintain because it has a good brand, a good user experience. And that's being reflected in the phenomenal growth that it posted in the past quarter and its projections for continued strong growth in the year ahead.
And you mentioned this importance of investors trying to wrap their head around crypto. And I think this other space that's kind of emerging, that's had phenomenal growth, and I think is being largely overlooked, is these DeFi funds, these decentralized finance type sector. You've called it the story of 2021. What's happening in this area, and what's that growth looking like?
Oh, I absolutely think it's the story of 2021. And you're absolutely right that it's being overlooked. These DeFi tokens and crypto asset blockchains have never been mentioned in publications like the Wall Street Journal and Barron's. The core idea behind DeFi or decentralized finance is the ability to program money using software. We've seen how software and automation has disrupted every major corner of the American economy, except the financial sector. We still have people like escrow agents and loan agents. It's a very slow moving sector. Decentralized finance, some people call it self-driving banks, is using software to disrupt the traditional financial services sector in the same way that Amazon disrupted the retail sector. And the really interesting thing about it is, even though people aren't writing about it in mainstream publications, the growth is huge and the profits and revenues in this space are significant. The largest crypto asset in the DeFi space is something called Uniswap. Many people haven't heard of it. It's a decentralized trading venue. Last month, there was $50 billion of trading activity on Uniswap, generating $250 million in fees. These are very real assets that exist today. Very early, again, very risky. Bitwise launched the first DeFi index fund. It's a private fund. It's not an ETF. But I think this is a space investors will be rewarded for spending their research time on. So look up DeFi, learn about it, study it. It's bigger than the mainstream media is paying attention to right now.
What do you say to investors that kind of look at this space? We talked about media. There's been so much hype around Dogecoin. Elon Musk goes on SNL. Those prices go crazy. We see these stories about trying to trade crypto and Robinhood crashing. And there just seems to be a lot of media around this that if I were an investor looking at this, I would be a little bit hesitant to maybe get in. But can you maybe talk about what investors can do to kind of parse out some of the hype from some of the real growth that's happening here?
That's the important effort. You're exactly right. How do you separate what's real from what's hype? We all know anytime there's a big disruptive innovation, you have speculative excess that sort of rides shotgun with that exciting growth. And crypto has been the best performing asset class in the world for the last 1, 3, 5, and 10 years. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing some of these absurdities bubble up on the side. And the thing to do as an investor is be skeptical. Ask questions. Ask yourself, is there real use here? Is there real development activity? Are there serious institutions moving into this space? And then secondly, from an investment perspective, you really need to take a long-term view. I actually have no idea, or very difficult to forecast where crypto will go in the next day, week, or month. We could wake up tomorrow, there could be another Elon Musk tweet that will rattle the market. But I have a great deal of confidence that the long-term outlook of allowing money to move over the internet, of allowing you to program money, of allowing us to have digital property rights is up and to the right. At least I'm hopeful that's the case. But so think of this as a long-term investment. Definitely do your own research. Try to separate the hype from what's real. And you do have to be careful out there.
Right. I think maybe just ignoring the Elon Musk tweets for now might be a good idea, at least on Dogecoin.
Absolutely. I agree there.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your insights today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
And you can head on over to investors.com for more of our crypto coverage. For Investors Business Daily, I'm Alexis Garcia.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching Investors Business Daily on YouTube. If you want to watch more videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.